live. Let me tweet my tweet here. And let's see.
Oh, you already got comments in here.
There we go. Yeah, I mean, the
People are waiting.
Here.
People are waiting on us.
It's Daytona time. Let's go.
All right. So we've been live for, 20 seconds? People are already here. I can't believe it.
I love it.
All right, go ahead. It's your channel. Take over.
All right. Guys, thank you for joining us, starting your morning with us, talking about the Daytona 500.
Are they racing Monday or Tuesday? We've already got that comment in there.
That's the first real question.
Already begun.
It's already started.
I'm not even looking at weather right now.
I can't. I think we get it in today. Now, whether that's with rain, possibly. I think it ends under rain if they do race today. But
really,
yeah,
you can't end the Daytona 500 early. The last one was a disaster when they did that. That was such nonsense.
Yeah.
Oh wow, well, it looks pretty bad as always. All right,
it looks bad. But yeah, so if you guys are new here, because I know we got a lot of new people, I was being followed on Twitter like crazy. I'm Brandon Cruz. I have my own Patreon. You can find me at Patreon, BrandonCruzDFS. With me is Pierce Dietrich, DraftKings contributor. He makes the Race for the Prize website, the sheet that we're looking at right now, everything that I use to make lineups. He basically makes. He's my research tool. And you can see on the bottom of the screen where you can read all his articles on DK Nation. You can see his website related to all.
All right, let's get to it. They don't need to know. RaceForThePrize.com, it's free.
I'm getting that out of the way. There we go. We're good now.
Let's just give them information. Let's not take up too much of their time. Let's be really simple. There are 3 builds. There's 6 guys starting in the back, which was the recipe yesterday, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been the recipe on Friday night. I think you still needed a little bit from the front. So you take blindly 6 guys from the back. You set from the back wherever you want. We'll talk about that in a second. So we're going to go through the drivers that we would put in our pool for building a 6 guy from the back lineup. We'll go through the pool of drivers for a 5 and then maybe 1 from the top 20 or top 15 and then a 4 and 2. I just want to make the best use of your time. I'm not going to go through salaries. If you have questions, we will stop to answer anything. We will. But this is the strategy here. It seems to make sense. So if you're building 6 guys from the back, I would say that's going to have, obviously, I've got the color coding wrong. Awesome job by me.
You're good.
How is that? No, the red should be the lowest value. Whatever. I'll fix that in a second. It's already gone wrong. People are already tuning out.
They're telling us to play Byron and Bowman. No, we're not. I mean, I am not interested in these guys at all. I think, I mean, on a straight up points level, they're the worst plays on the slate. Can we really play any of the back markers? Are they too slow? I am personally over the field on the back markers. So I would say yes. I don't know how you feel.
Ready to get to that. We're getting ready to get to these back markers. So I'm going to set, if I'm doing a 6-0 lineup, what is that, like that? I'm going to say that 20 is going to be my number. Mm-hmm. You can disagree out there when we can come back to this. But for now, just to get the show running, I'm going to say 20 back for starting in the back. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm completely with you.
Okay, so starting with Kurt Busch, we'll go from a sliding scale of 1 to 5. 5 being I will have a lot. We're not saying that's 100%, but that means he has a firm, strong, solid place in the pool of drivers that we're going to pick from for the 6 guys starting in the back lineup. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go as high as 5. Now, the reason, and that's going to sound aggressive to some people. I don't know why it's doing my coloring backwards. Whatever. No, it's right. Now it's good.
It's live TV.
Anyway, so, and I'm not going to go through in-depth explanations for everybody, but I will for this one, and I'll get your response. And I kind of put this, if you go to RaceForThePrize.com and you're reading my weekend notes, the reason why I would elevate Busch is just an ownership thing of whether people start, where they draw their line. Since he is on the boundary of that line, is he considered in the back or not? That's going to lower his ownership. Also, you'll see in the spreadsheet that he's been I would say god-awful at Daytona since he barely won that Daytona 500 in which Larson ran out of fuel. So he's been bad. He's on the border. That means people won't play him. If you're trying to be slightly different, that's why I elevate him. What do you think?
I completely agree. I think that even if you compare him to Ricky Stenhouse Jr., I think those guys are the exact same play. And Kurt has actually, he's ran well at Daytona. He's just been caught up in the wrecks. He's caught up in the wrecks in the last 20
That's
laps.
everybody.
I mean, that's everybody. But I mean,
all run well until they get caught up in the wreck.
I mean, if you look at his,
he has experience, he knows what he's doing. He's just had bad luck, and that can turn at any point. And if people are going to read that bad luck and say, I don't want to play him, then I'll gladly go the other direction. And it's the same thing with Stenhouse. We're really trying to get into the mentality of other players. And I know people can read his spreadsheet and they know that he's won, but they can also read that he hasn't been very good. And they can also, whether it's erroneous or not, come up with the understanding that, well, maybe he's better at Talladega than Daytona. I'm not going to spend too much time trying to dissect, is there a difference between Talladega and Daytona? I'm not. I'm just going to approach it from, if people are scared of him, great. We know he can win. We know he's aggressive. We know he's going for a win and not settling for a top 10. If he settles for a top 10, there's a chance that he might not be optimal. But we know that he's not going to do that. It's GPP only, so I like playing Stenhouse. Sure, it's not worked a lot, but most of these plays don't work a lot. It's a play rate.
You know, one thing that I have noticed over this week at Daytona is that Stenhouse has been underowned. Way more than I thought he would be. You know, starting at the back in the duel, people were really worried to play him.
He didn't run, so that one did not work at all. But if you're he was in the wrong spot. He was lined up between two drivers that weren't aggressive. He got buried in the bottom line, and he just was never able to recover. You can see later in the race, he was trying to be aggressive. He was trying to make something happen, but he just got buried in the back because he just started in the worst spot. I thought he was going to be in a pretty good spot. But you could see real early that the outside line was going, and the leader of the bottom row was just too casual and safe, and the Stenhouse play just completely failed way too early.
Yeah, he got trapped with, you know, and
I think he was behind Bowman most of that. So that's not going to be the case here. There'll be plenty of opportunities to shift through the field and be aggressive. His strength is his aggression, and he got pretty much locked out of the race at the very beginning, unfortunately.
And I know the Roval is on the road course, but I'm assuming a lot of casuals are just playing the Cup Series races here. And he wasn't owned at all in the big tournament for the Roval either. I know that's a road course, but he was starting last. And he didn't wreck, and he wasn't, absolutely horrible.
So, long story short, the Stenhouse fear of wrecking has scared the field away, lowered his ownership, and that could be a place to play. Busher, I know. So this is another one where he gets too much attention. He's gotten too much heat, and it's a lot of because, he's got 5 top 10s in the last 7 at Daytona. How many times has he been optimal? Anyone want to answer that question? How many times has Chris Buescher been optimal at Daytona?
It's on the screen.
Is it on the screen?
Yeah,
so
it was. It was.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess you're right. I've got a thing that shows it. Yeah. I think he's actually been optimal 3 times at Daytona. I might need to adjust that. But either way, the top 10's not going to help you. You need him to be a little bit more aggressive. I don't think he's going to be that aggressive. I wouldn't completely fade him, but I would go at least down to 3. If he's going to be highly owned and we know he doesn't have the GPP upside that we probably need, he's close at 22. Now, some people will argue, well, he's cheaper. Price doesn't matter. You need to be really efficient and still not be in the optimal lineup. We really need people going for it. And he is not a go-for-it driver, especially after last season being the struggle that it was. You go a little higher or lower? Where do you stand?
I am probably lower on that. Let me check my Buescher exposure. Yeah, I'm not playing Buescher.
We're going to get to Truex in a second, so hold tight. And you can actually, if you went to racefortheprize.com, read my weekend notes, you're going to get what I already said about Truex, my thoughts on Truex. Let's go to DiBenedetto. I'm going to pull him up to 4 because my theory with DiBenedetto is he's got to win. This is it. He probably won't have a ride next year regardless, so he needs to go get wins. This is going to be, one of maybe 6 or 7 races this season where he actually has a chance of winning. Probably better go for the win. A top 10 doesn't do anything for DiBenedetto's career, doesn't do anything for the Wood brothers. I would be aggressive. He could wreck very easily, but I would expect him to go for a win. That's why I like him more than Buescher. I might even go a little bit heavier than Stenhouse. What's your stance on DiBenedetto?
Yeah, I would actually look at DiBenedetto as maybe a stronger play than Stenhouse Jr. I mean, Kurt Busch, Stenhouse, Matt DiBenedetto, they're all the same play to me. They all kind of fit in that category of they're either going to want to lead, they're going to want to be first, because we've seen DiBenedetto lead a lot of laps here at Daytona specifically. We've seen
but remember that was in that Toyota car where he had some Toyota protection. Now I know he's in Penske car and could have some. Well, I don't even know how strong that Penske connection is anymore. You can make an argument, but even if he did have a strong Penske alliance, I don't see Logano, Keselowski, or Blaney really helping him out up front.
Really, and I would see it as the kind of the Ford powerhouse.
I would see Blaney wanting to take the lead and say, DiBenedetto, get behind me. Whereas with the JGR cars, like Denny Hamlin doesn't need to lead laps. Kyle Busch doesn't really need to feel like if he's up there with Ford. You could see with the personalities of those JGR cars, they all were, that's fine, let DiBenedetto lead, we're all good. I don't even know if he necessarily led a train of JGR cars for a lot of that, but he did have assistance. Let's go Keselowski. I'm going to go aggressive. I'm almost going to go to a 0, but I'm going to go to a 1. And the reason is he has not been good. Everything that he has shown me from plate races, just from watching with my eyes, is he does not have it anymore. We've talked about this, and the results bear it out. The people are going to play him based on brand name, based on something that he did 5 years ago. I'm glad to fade that ownership. And if he wrecks, that's a huge advantage to me. It's a gamble, but it's a gamble I'm definitely willing to take.
I am with you once again. I know we haven't got to Hamlin or Truex, but out of these 3 guys, Keselowski's the only one I have in a lineup, because I am strongly fading the ownership that Keselowski, Hamlin, and Truex are going to carry. I think everybody from casuals to guys, that
everyone's playing.
Everybody's going to play these guys, and I just want to be off the field on them. So I have Keselowski in one lineup. I don't have Hamlin or Truex at all. I think we're going to see their ownership close to top high 40s, maybe even high 50s. You could say that about the other big names in the back, but I think these 3 guys will be the chalkiest plays in this race.
So let's just set up the scenario, and then we'll get to the question on the Ford Toyota. So his ownership is going to be sky high. So that's number 1. And then some of these other guys like DiBenedetto and Chase Briscoe and Tyler Reddick, their ownership is going to be a lot lower. And then we look at the second step and we ask question number 2 after, well, what's their ownership? Question number 2 is, what's the likelihood that they avoid a wreck? You cannot tell me that Keselowski's ability to avoid a wreck is that much higher than Briscoe or Reddick's. And we have the disparity in ownership, which will be significant. So if that's the case, then their wreck avoidance should also have at least a similar disparity, or a higher level. It should mean that if Brad Keselowski, let's just say if he's 50% owned, then he should have a 50% chance of avoiding wrecks. And if Reddick is lower, then it should line up. There at least should be some sort of correlation there. But there isn't. Brad Keselowski's ability to avoid a wreck based on recent performance or just plate track facts, it's pretty much the same. So if they're both going to wreck at the same rate, then I will gladly take the lower ownership guys. Question about Ford and Toyota. I'm not even thinking about that. If I were to think about Ford and Toyota, the first thing that I would think about is Chevy, because they tend to have more cars and they have demonstrated that they will passively work together. You also have a lot of Chevy cars that aren't really so with the Fords, you have a lot of top dogs that all want to win, that are all alpha drivers. Whereas with the Chevys, it's a lot of guys that really just want to stay in it towards the end. And that seems like a safer play to me. But even then, I'm just looking at guys in the back. What do you think?
No, I'm completely with you. The only one, and I'm not playing like a manufacturer or really a team stack. I mean, maybe I mean, it just so happened that I have like Buescher and Custer in lineups together, but that's not because they're Fords or they're with Stewart Haas. It just kind of happened in the lineup. So I'm not going out of my way to play manufacturers in this race, especially with, like, for example, we just talked about Denny Hamlin and Truex. I said I'm fading them straight out. If I were to play, a Toyota manufacturer stack, I would take those guys out, and that's kind of not really working with each other, because if Toyota's going to do well, it's going to be because of these 2 guys,
Speaking of Hamlin, I'm going to go low on Hamlin as well. I know it's crazy. I know in basically every article I did this week and every interview I did this week, who's going to win? Well, I hate answering that question. So if I have to answer the question, I'm going to go with the easiest answer where I don't have to do a lot of research. So I said Hamlin. But if I'm playing DFS and trying to outsmart the field, and I don't even think it is a galaxy brain situation, and I don't really believe that you're trying to outsmart the field. You're just simply playing the numbers. You're playing the odds. This is a game at Vegas, really. And if everyone is going to be on Hamlin, and I know that he has done well, but his ownership is going to be so high that I'm glad taking my chances on picking the right lineup without him.
I mean, completely agree. He should be the highest owned driver. I mean, they're going to have, a 3-hour preview show talking about nothing but Hamlin.
Like that's the other thing, like these news articles. So I'm not a big fan of, hey, go read a bunch of DFS articles and watch a bunch of DFS shows. But the alternative is to read the articles that are being released by the mainstream NASCAR media, which is garbage. Like this is the biggest race of the year, and they're not actually talking about the actual race. Imagine the NFL going into big games, and instead of talking about 3-4 defenses and zone coverage and scheming and game plans, instead it's all just human interest pieces. But that's what NASCAR does. And so I'm already done looking at NASCAR Twitter, because you can see, like, look at the creation of how Jordan and Bubba Wallace came together. That would have been a great article last month when there was nothing to do. But that's it. That's all these articles are just, it's all human interest. It has nothing to do with racing. So if I were you out there and you want to look into that, I would just watch these DFS shows and look at the DFS articles, because we're going to be the closest people to actually breaking down scenarios and events in these races. And the human interest crap probably will drive up Hamlin ownership. It's going to drive up Bubba Wallace ownership, and has nothing to do with the actual race or how the race will play out. It's just going to be feel-good stories. So maybe play people that aren't in feel-good stories. And so we've kind of already alluded to this. It's the same thing. By all means, don't, you can play Keselowski, you can play Hamlin, you can play Truex. They all have the ability to win this race and score a lot of points, but they all also have the same opportunity to wreck, and they have demonstrated that in previous years. Truex is maybe one of the worst of all time. I know those are Talladega numbers, but his Daytona numbers aren't much better. He is awful. And even though Hamlin has been good recently, he's still wrecked in some plate races. He's not perfect. But please don't completely fade them, because we're being a little aggressive. I don't know if I would play all three in a lineup, but if you want to play a couple, that's fine.
Yeah, I certainly won't do that. And tagging on to that, you have to really and we're not just saying this because we think they're going to be highly owned. If you look back at specifically the Daytona 500, we get a lot of new players every year into this, and some of them obviously don't have the research that we have, or some of them are playing this casually and they're going to enter that 15. And when you enter that contest or any contest on DraftKings, you automatically see Hamlin highest owned priced. You see Keselowski, Elliott, the brand names that everybody knows even outside of the sport. People are going to click on them, or even if they don't know him, they'll see Hamlin. Everybody keeps talking about him. He's the highest priced driver. He's starting in the back. The
price is too low, by the way, but I understand NASCAR being soft to try to get DraftKings being soft to get everybody into the contest.
Yeah, so everybody's going to be looking at these major guys. That's why I'm fading them.
So put up a Stiltner's question. So right now we're going through 6 guys in the back build. Then we'll do 5 guys in the back, 1 guy towards the front, 4 guys towards the back, 2 guys towards the front, which is typically the optimal line. If you go to the DraftKings or go to my spreadsheet at racefortheprize.com, you'll see the previous optimal lineups, get a good idea of the starting positions. And so, you can see, there's 6 guys in the back lineup. Oh, that was a 4 and 2, 4 guys starting in the back, 2 guys up towards the front. So that's generally the build. Now, where we draw that line, we just decide at the beginning, and I usually do, I go 20 back. You can draw the line wherever you want. If you want to move it up a little bit and include LaJoie, McDowell, Reagan, and McMurray into your build, by all means do that. It has nothing really to do with these drivers. You got to draw the line somewhere. A lot of times I would draw the line at 25. I've kind of moved it up by looking at the data over the last couple of years to 20. I haven't seen a lot of data that supports these guys. But then when you have these specific names, if it was Denny Hamlin, if it was Brad Keselowski, if it was Chase Elliott, I would be much more likely to play them, because they can get top 5s. These guys, because they really need top 5s at this spot, and these guys can get top 5s. It's just not as I know Corey LaJoie has been in a lot of optimal lineups, but Corey LaJoie was starting in the back. Michael McDowell was in the back. Reagan was starting in the back.
So, and
I'm not going to be on those guys. I think there's plenty of places to go crazy. If you are playing those guys, you're really betting on this race to be pretty crazy, and you need a lot of wrecks. And if that's the case, then why isn't it these guys in the back here?
Mm-hmm.
So I can't logically line that up. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I can't make it work in my brain.
Yeah, and we'll answer the question about the back markers, Rick cars. I mean, fading. I'm saying that I can't fade Hamlin or Truex. I mean, even if you don't want to look at it in an ownership point, look at it in terms of how likely are they optimal, and how likely are all three of these guys optimal? Hamlin, Truex, Keselowski, or how optimal are two of them together? How optimal is one of them together? I don't see their high ownership that they're going to carry, maybe around 50%, even higher, being equivalent to how probable they're in the optimal lineup. I just don't see that. And plate races are just ownership plays. If you look back at the Truck Series race, if you look at the Xfinity Series race, I mean, everybody has the same chance of wrecking. And I personally think that this is a very ugly race to where there's a ton of guys wrecking. So even if that helps out Truex, if that helps out Hamlin, if that helps out Keselowski, that's also going to help out Eric Jones, Briscoe, even the guys starting farther back. And so I just don't see Hamlin and Truex working. That's just me personally. I mean, you could play them if you want, but that's my opinion.
I think Hamlin and Keselowski and Truex are fine plays. They are, but we are being very aggressive and trying to separate. If you're building 3 lineups, 5 lineups even, maybe even 10 lineups, you probably will have plenty of Hamlin and Truex and Keselowski. I'm just making a bet that says I think these guys are going to fail, and if they do, it's going to look great for me, and it's going to kill the rest of the field. I can't see Hamlin just continuing to ride this wave of good breaks. The wave crashes at some point. So if you're playing Hamlin, one of my perspective here is you're chasing the wave. And now you're jumping on, and guess what? Once you see the wave and you jump on the wave, sorry, you're probably already too late to the party. This thing's going to crash. Maybe you get lucky and you keep riding, or maybe you just bought some AMC at $20 and now it's worth $5. Right?
You know, what's that?
You got GME at $200, and sorry, when the news started reporting it, when everyone started, you were already too late. You needed to be in the Wall Street's Reddit room before the wave, before it took off. And maybe you get lucky and it keeps on going, but I think the wave has got to crash. It cannot just keep finishing in the top 5 at these plate races. Eventually, someone's mistake is going to catch him. You can't avoid them all. I mean, how many wrecks has he? I would love to see the number. How many wrecks has Hamlin avoided over the last 4 or 5 plate races? It's statistically improbable that he has been able to avoid all of these wrecks. It can't keep happening. I would gladly bet the other side. Now, there's nothing wrong with playing Hamlin, Keselowski, or Truex. Again, we are being aggressive. Custer.
Well, last thing,
Wall Street bets. knock. Diamond hands, fade Hamlin, Truex. If you're playing Truex, Hamlin, and Keselowski, you've got paper hands. You got a Hoddle, Custer, Benedetto, Stenhouse, Kurt Busch, diamond hands. Come on, people.
I'm going to get into penny stocks. I'm telling you, the Cope train is going to be real, but we'll get there. Focusing on Fanduel, I have nothing else to add. You're doing it exactly correct on Fanduel, in my opinion. I have nothing to add there. One last thing on the Hamlin train. If you look at Justin Haley last night, is a perfect example. And maybe I'm using this because it fits our argument. But Justin Haley had gone back to back to back and won the last 3 plate races. And what happened last night? He wrecked.
He was up there at the end.
He was.
Can't avoid them all.
All right, so let's continue down. What are we at? Cole Custer.
I like Custer a lot.
I like Custer a lot too.
Is he good? It doesn't matter. Is he in a good car? Yes. If you want to play the Ford scenario, that's fine. I'm just hoping he doesn't wreck. He's in the back, helps me pivot a little bit. I'm sure that he's going to be packaged in with a lot of Truex, Hamlin, Keselowski. That's fine. I can't completely avoid ownership on everything. Joey Gase, it's going to be a no for me. I'll have none. My worry is that, for Gase to work, we need 17 cautions at the end so we can get all these wave around so that he can get back onto the lead lap. And even then, once he's on the lead lap, he has to decide, all right, I'm going to run really hard on this last run, even though you don't know if it's going to be the last run of the race. You don't know if there's going to be another caution. And these Rick Ware cars haven't really demonstrated in the past. And you can look, I talked about this in the weekend notes. 0 times has one of these true absolute back markers been in the optimal lineup. Brendan Poole, but Brendan Poole is not an absolute back marker. There were often times where he was outrunning regular cars. But the true back markers have never been in an optimal lineup over the last 20 years, except 20 years, 20 races, except for the lightning shortened race. Fine. That's something different. If you're betting on this race ending because of lightning, you are even more aggressive than I am. I'm not playing the guy. What do you got?
So when it comes to plate tracks, if I kind of drunkenly stumble into the optimal lineup, I'm very happy with it. Playing guys from the back for me has always led to a profit. I've finished very well in smaller contests with this. I haven't taken down the big GPP, obviously, but I'm leaning more towards being profitable. And I've been very profitable playing, the back markers. I haven't taken down GPPs, but been profitable. So Joey Gaze, I would argue, is probably the safest of the Rick Ware cars. Okay. And I'll go into this. And so I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, so he finished 17th at Talladega last year. He finished not so good at Daytona, but he has gone forward. He's not going to kill your 28th though.
So the reason. Sorry, the reason that I say he's the safest because he's the only Rick Ware car that didn't have any issues this entire week. Josh Bilicki had overheating issues.
That's not
Derek Cope. I mean, look.
You just play it safe and not play any of these Rick Ware cars.
I mean, that would be probably a better play. Let's see, I have 9 lineups with Gase in it, but I'm playing specifically, these guys in the back that aren't going to carry ownership. And no one's going to own them, so I guess you could throw that in an argument. But you need an absolute wreck fest.
If you are playing Truex and some of these more popular plays, then to diversify your lineups a little bit, you might want to put in some Gase. But if you're not playing some of these guys, I would probably not need very much Gase. Tyler Reddick, fine with that. It's the same strategies. Custer, you want to dive in. He won the Daytona 2018 Xfinity race. That's cool. That's great. It just doesn't matter to me. He did finish 7th at Talladega last fall, so he has demonstrated that he can survive races, and he demonstrated that in Xfinity Series as well. But we're simply trying to take some bigger drivers because top-tier teams have more upside. They can get top 5s. They can get top 10s. Gase, it's going to be very hard for him to get in the top 10, even the top 15. These guys can win races, and so they have tons of potential.
And I even have Gase as projected to finish 22nd. So that's not negative points. So I'm not saying he's going to win the race or anything.
Wes, don't look at your lineups, bud. Don't look. And don't even look at the lineups until about 5 minutes after. Don't do it.
Unless you like a rush, for 4 hours of your life.
You got the ups and the downs. Oh my gosh, it's like being a drug addict. It's like smoking crack, isn't it?
I would argue.
I know what it's like, but I've seen in the movies that the ups and downs, I just can't deal with it. Eric Jones, I like Eric Jones a lot.
I like Eric Jones. I think Jones is going to be the least owned of the maybe Briscoe too, but Eric Jones shouldn't carry a lot of ownership for whatever reason. I think a lot of people are going to go to people like Cindric, Gralla, Trix, Hamlin, Custer.
Options back here.
Yeah, I think Eric Jones kind of goes under-owned with his potential of not getting.
Sure, the stats are there, and I know they're JGR stats, but his car's not that much of a downgrade, and he also has a Clash win from last year. He knows what he's doing. He knows the approach. He knows how to get to these races. If we're talking experience-wise, it's better than Briscoe. It's better than Reddick. Is his car better? It doesn't matter at these plate tracks. He's not going to be missing anything that allows Custer, Reddick, or Briscoe to be better than him. Will he be a little bit more aggressive than normal? I don't really think so.
If you look back at what Bubba did in that 43 car at plate tracks, Bubba's kind of always been up front in whatever it is on a plate track, but that car is going to be strong,
Pretty good finishes for Bubba and Eric. And even Eric Almirola. I know Eric Almirola won a rain-shortened race at Daytona 2014, but he still had good results in that car before. I'm not on Derek Cope for the same reason that I'm not on Joey Gase, but I will defer to you. And you can give me the Derek Cope narrative here.
Okay, so we're gonna answer this in terms of leaving money on the table. I probably closed that too soon. Let me look at my average.
You can pop it back up.
Oops. Well,
it back on.
There you go. My average, I have 22 lineups today. My average salary left on the table is around $16,105. So, I mean, that's the way I'm.
Leave as much as you want. If you really want to think about that, the best way is, I don't know if I have, I thought I had somewhere something that told me all the money that was left. I don't really have it in front of me, but it's a lot. I don't think we've seen a rule. I mean, we've seen them spend all the money. We've seen winning lineups leave 5,000, 6,000. I don't really think much about salary. Just take guys that you think are going to survive. I mean, their salary doesn't matter. DraftKings doesn't know who's going to wreck and who isn't going to wreck. They just don't. So, and you don't either. But, I would just pick guys that you think will luck out, and their price does not have any. Look. So Brett Keselowski is about the second highest priced driver. He's wrecked more than anyone else. He's wrecked out of more. Well, I got it on here. Let's see. What is over the last 20 races? What are the survival rank? He's 10th, or he's 15th, but that's weighted because he's actually pretty decent a couple races before he absolutely collapsed.
I mean, these are brutal races when you have something.
Even when you're doing kind of well at the beginning, Keselowski is still wrecking out of half of his races. 48% of the time he finishes 20th or worse. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I mean, it's shocking how bad, and these races they seem to get worse and worse. Like this package that they're running right now just seems to.
McDowell 61%, and McDowell's been. I mean, look, we like McDowell. He's had some optimal lineups, but he just illustrates exactly what we're doing here. He's wrecking out probably more than anyone else, but yet when we look at optimal lineups, he's one of the best. So that's just the devil we're dancing with.
Yeah. Going back to Cope.
Right, go to Cope.
I can't imagine he's very high owned, because we've seen it through the years that, a lot of these quote unquote backmarkers aren't very high owned, and everybody is hating and ragging on, and for good reason. I mean, I'm not saying this man's a saint. He was a joke in the dual races, but let's say he I mean, he's going to be under 10% owned. I know that for sure. I would put a lot of money on him being under 10. Let's say he's at 6. Do you play him personally if he's at 6?
So for these guys, I'm not really thinking about their ownership. I'm trying to understand a scenario where Derek Cope is in the optimal lineup. And I cannot find. Look, we looked at the last 21 races. These true backmarkers have not gotten into the optimal lineup. And the reason is, even if we get a ton of wrecks at the end, they're 2 or 3 laps down. They need to get the lucky dog, which they probably won't get. That's going to go to the first guy who got into a small wreck up front. That's usually 1 lap down, still racing. Or they need to wave around, which means you need the leader to pit. And the leader ain't going to pit in most of these cases. It's going to be hard for them to get their laps back. Brendan Gaughan barely got it back through a miracle in the last time that he was optimal. And even then, he had to race through the field and avoid some more wrecks. So Derek Cope, if he survives to the end and somehow is able to get enough lucky dogs to get back on the lead lap, he then has to avoid yet another collapse because they're going to wreck him all in the last lap. He's got to avoid that one too, which is very hard to do when you're in the back of the pack. It's asking a lot. Look, it's not that hard to avoid the last wreck of the race when you're in 10th at that point. You might have started 30th, but now you're in 10th. And so when that big wreck happens, you're able to avoid it. But when that big wreck happens at the end, he's going to restart in 20th. So all the chaos is going to be in front of him. I think that's a low. You really need a lot of craziness. And even if all that happens, all the stars align, why the hell is it Derek Cope and not one of these other guys?
Let's see. So what does he start with? He starts with 9 DK points.
No one dropping to the rear changes my mind about anything.
I mean, like,
the order will shift and swing. I mean, I think the perfect example, if you are even slightly hesitant to roster him, let's just pull up the Daytona 500 laps. I got them in here somewhere, one of the million different things. I think I put the Daytona 500 laps in here from last year. Probably didn't, because I'm an idiot. I can pull up on another sheet. But anyway, You can pull it up for free at raceforprice.com. You can look previous lap by laps. I have a video where I went over this. But Denny Hamlin hung in the back for the entire first stage. And it wasn't until stage 2 that he actually started racing. So Eric Jones starting in the back, it doesn't matter. Last year's race winner was in pretty much last for all of stage 1. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Hamlin go back there. I guarantee it. If anyone out there wants to take a bet, Denny Hamlin starting 25th. Stage 1, he's going to the back. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Truex go with him as well. Where else? What are the other JGR guys? They're probably too close to the front.
I think they're starting up front, closer.
They're going to the back.
Bill, yeah.
Bubba. So they're going to go to the back, hang out. And then, you know, when they'll link up, when they do their first green flag pit stops, they'll all swing together and, you know, all will work out there.
Yeah, and this is kind of my last
point. If he finishes 20th, he'll get 36 DK points.
I don't think he gets 20th.
Not enough.
Yeah.
That's not enough points. And I mean, you can just look at, let's just look at the last one. The last optimal lineup, you needed 58.5 points. I don't know why that looks weird, but it does. Is that the right lineup? Why does it seem so strange to me? You didn't even have the race winner. How crazy is that?
So there's
Derek Cope going to score 58 points?
No, but
why are you playing Derek Cope?
Because I think on top of there's a chance that he's top 17 in DK points total. Like I said, I'm not aiming. These are about the only races I don't aim for the opt. Yeah, I mean I like all the guys in the back. I mean,
we disagree.
They are not safe plays whatsoever. But
it's not that they're not safe. I don't even think they work. Period. Even if they avoid Ross Chastain, love it.
Yeah, I like him. He'll 1, 2. Yeah, I like him.
He's Ricky Stenhouse. He's the exact same driver. Probably not going to be interested in Chastain much this season, but the plate tracks, especially starting in the back. Cody Ware, I'm going to say no. If I were to play any of these jokers, I probably would have Cody Ware. I'll put him in a 1 just to show people that if I play any of the Rick Ware cars, Cody Ware might be the one guy that I roster.
Mm-hmm. And Cody Ware was running.
If these guys get aggressive at the end, it's going to be Cody Ware. It's going to be the son of Rick Ware, who doesn't really have to, pay the price for messing up a car. I don't know what Eric Cope's got to do or not, but
yeah. Cody was running a 13th at Talladega when he got wrecked in the fall race on the back straightaway.
There you go. Alfredo will also be a 4 for me. Front Row Motorsports, we've seen Cole Witt be optimal. I don't think that's too much of a stretch to compare Alfredo talent level, skill level to Cole Witt. I mean, Cole Witt might be a little bit better, but it's fine by me. Balicki, you know my stance. We know your stance, but you probably have, 1s or 2s for these guys?
Probably more like 3 and 4s.
What? No one's ever watch this show and get now. If you get do your victory lap afterwards, but then again, everyone's gonna. So if these guys come through, I won't do this, but I guarantee other DFS people will do this. They would not have liked any of these guys, and if they come through, they're gonna say, well, "We told you to play people in the back." Yeah, but you also said don't play Cope and play these guys. I said play people in the back. I'm not going to do that. If these guys end up in the optimal lineup, I'll say, whoop, got it wrong and move on and not really care about it.
So, and I know we're on BJ and we're going to talk about Austin and Kaz. I had to get off of them because I wanted to put Kaz and Austin in every single lineup that I made.
Yeah, well, if you're swerving here like I am, then I have no problem going with Cindric and Gralla. If you are going heavy on Keselowski, Hamlin, Truex, or even going medium, you might want to lower these guys. That seems to make sense if we're going down that route.
Yeah, it's pretty much a counterweight of how much ownership you have on those
guys. You can, but if you play a lot of these guys and these guys, you are gonna get duped. I would imagine, unless you take Derek Cope, you might get a little duped.
And look, I mean, we can kind of already see, the chalk plays back here. Kaz, Austin, Alfredo, Chastain, Jones, Briscoe, Reddick, Custer, Truex, Hamlin.
These guys end up, and it doesn't matter. Like if you are fading Keselowski, Hamlin, or Truex, these guys are still going to end up in the lineups, aren't they?
Yeah, and you
play them. These are so that might be a place where you want to swerve. And is getting away from these guys. But then I imagine a lot of people are going to do that and still play these guys.
Yeah, and I have to imagine that a lot of people are going to use the drivers that I just mentioned there. So if you're dead set on playing those guys, I'd highly advise throwing one guy like Hoffcope just to try and get, a lineup that isn't.
They can at least get positive points. They may not, and again, you don't have to have the optimal lineup. If Cope gets 20th and your other 5 are awesome, you still got a really good shot at winning. I mean, if all 6 of your drivers dodge every single landmine, you're probably going to win a lot of money if you're that lucky. Even if your last guy is Cope and he doesn't do that well, but if your other 5 hit, you got a really good chance. I could be wrong, obviously, but
and that's more of the line that I build plate tracks with. Like, I mean, I know it sounds stupid to like not aim for the optimal lineup, but I'm just aiming to get 6 drivers who aren't wrecked.
RaceForThePrize.com, Sterling. If you just go to RaceForThePrize.com, my first post has. Sorry to interrupt, Brad.
No, you're good.
But if you go to RaceForThePrize.com, the first post shows you all the Daytona stuff, my weekend notes, and the spreadsheet that we're looking at right now. All right, go ahead.
So, I might not have the highest scoring lineup. I have not had the highest scoring lineup the last 2 nights, but I've had extremely good nights playing low-owned guys that make it through wrecks, and that I am completely happy with that. I'll chase the optimal when we get to the road courses, when we get to the 1.5 miles, but I am content right now with just getting strong lineups that finish well.
All right, let's switch over to 5 and 1. So this build is going to be 5 guys starting in the back and then 1 guy up towards the front. I'm not interested in Bowman. Are you?
No, I'll help you here. The only guy that I would like in this situation, if I'm playing somebody in the top 10, would be Bubba, because he's either going to wreck or win the race. And we at least know his outcome, he's going to win or wreck the field.
Yeah, I don't like any of these guys. I mean, they got to lead laps. It can happen. We've seen these races go conservative towards the beginning portion of the race, but I mean, he's got to. If you're trying to be different, maybe I would include Eric Almirola, because he has been a strong plate driver. If any of these guys is determined to lead a bunch of laps at the beginning, I would say Almirola is one of the guys that I would trust. I think the only reason I'm considering Bubba is just pure narrative streak. I don't see Bubba leading a lot of laps. I could see him doing what DiBenedetto did a couple years ago, where he leads a bunch of laps and then he still doesn't finish well. And what was that, 2019?
Yeah, one of those.
Yeah.
Well, no, I like the one he finished second in. He wasn't even. I don't think he scored that well because he started up front.
Let me pull her up. Daytona. It was 2,500 Daytona, 2019. And where's DiBenedetto? So look at all these. Led all those laps, led all those laps, and he finished 28th. I could definitely, and he was the quasi Toyota car.
That's Bubba. I mean, that's his story today.
It's the same thing, right?
Maybe if you want to argue to try and find lap leader that finishes up front, Harvick had a very strong car. A lot of the drivers were talking about how Harvick had one of the best cars.
Harvick is definitely one of the people that he had a fast car. He can go up there and lead. He can finish 7 place differential points. But, as long as a bunch of home runs don't come through, Harvick can work if Truex and Keselowski don't work, which is not asking that much. So I definitely, if we're trying to take one of those guys from the top, he's a little bit further back. That helps. But he also has talent. And Logano is the same situation. Cash lines versus GPP lines. If I'm doing cash, I'm playing 6-0. And I've talked about this before. If you take one of these guys in the top 5, so let's just say I'm cash lineups, my lineup versus your lineup, Brandon, and we'll say that you build a 5-1 and I build 6-0. And your guy starting towards the front wrecks.
He wrecks.
Lost.
Yeah.
You just lost. I mean, let's say that 3 of my cars go through and 3 of your. So I have 3 guys that wreck and 3 of your guys wreck, but one of your 3 guys was starting towards the front. I just won. So if I'm playing cash, it's playing the guys in the back. And you're probably going to get stuck with Keselowski, DiBenedetto, and all those crappers. And really, it's just going to come down to, I imagine what cash people are going to do is play, these 3 guys and these two guys because they can't lose any points. And then, so basically, cash games are going to come down. Do you disagree? So cash.
No, yeah, I completely.
This lineup. These three jokers. Yep. These
jokers.
And then it's like, all right, cool. You're going to win money or lose money based on picking one of the guys in this crowd that doesn't wreck. I'm not really all that interested in playing that because you don't know. There's no advantage whatsoever. You want to try to get cute and break away from this? That's fine. That's the only way that you're going to have any sort of advantage or edge. But you got to play those two. And so that's it. That's what cash is today.
Yeah,
I could be wrong, but I think that's what cash is. I think you've got, and I would guarantee that most people are only going to look at these guys. They're not going to roster some of your jabronis in cash. They're going to look at Custer, Reddick, Briscoe, Jones, Chastain, Alfredo. And then even then, I would say these two would probably be the first guys that I would look at just because they can lose. Let's say that it comes down to we pick these five. You have these five in your cash. I have those five in my cash. I play Alfredo and you play Chastain, and they both wreck. Well, guess what? I probably win because I lost less place differential points.
That's how it is.
So I don't know how logical people are going to go through this step-by-step process, and I don't know if you can program that into an optimizer for cash, but if people go through that, then they're going to end up with that lineup with Alfredo, maybe Chastain, but these guys will be even lower owned.
Yeah, and I mean, because of that, I would argue, I don't play cash to begin with, but I would argue that today is a horrible day for cash, unless you specifically want to pivot off of here. I know he's brought up your second favorite driver, Newman, and his narrative streak. I don't know what the narrative.
Right. I'll listen to that. I listen to the audience. You're right. Why consider that narrative and not? It's good. You're right. I missed that. It's stupid. Not that you're stupid. It's stupid that I'm considering it. You're right.
Really?
Idea to bet that narrative.
If the narrative was to happen, it would be in the summer race last year.
Start making up narratives for everybody if we really want to.
Yeah, we need
only God knows the narratives.
But yeah, I mean, what's the narrative? Newman flipped over again, and he just happened to cross the line. And this happened to be when he was leading the race. And
we could say, "Oh, there's a narrative for Alex Bowman in the 48 car, something, something, something." I don't know.
Yeah.
Austin Dillon, 3 car, 20 years, blah 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 blah. Like we can start doing down that route.
Yeah.
Again, that's my fault for opening that can of worms. But you're right. If you are going to play Bubba Wallace, then maybe you do consider Newman, and he is a little bit closer to the back. I could see Newman having a good day, but not being optimal. Kyle Busch, yeah, I think I would. I mean, I probably don't like him as much as Harvick Logano, but I would put him right there as well. He can definitely win, and he could score just enough points that gets into the optimal lineup. I probably like him more in a 4-2 build. We'll take 2 guys from the front, and we saw one of the rare occasions where the JGR dominance at the end of the Daytona 500 in 2019. Now, that wasn't necessarily because JGR was dominant or because they linked up and did this awesome job. They just all got lucky and avoided all the wrecks, and they finished 1, 2, and 3. That was not a very likely scenario. It happened. Anything can happen, but I would not try to project that happening again. Ryan Preece. I'm going to take it. Which I like how I try to get lower ownership.
Make him 1.
I don't see how he outscores a bunch of people. And I don't see how he's the – actually, I'm going even lower. Like, if there's only one guy from the top 20 making it, how often is that one guy going to be Ryan Preece? It has to be an absolute S show. I don't see it, but I won't completely take him out.
Now, you say that, and I know for a fact that Mike Joy used to talk very highly about Preece because Preece always avoids crashes. And then if people are looking at his finishes, specifically at Talladega, Daytona is a completely different story. But if people look at the finishes, there's a chance Preece is higher owned than he should be, which he should be low owned to begin with. But
I would argue, though, if we are going to go down this route, that the Talladega spring races tend to be much more conservative, and you have to avoid less wrecks. The Daytona races have been insane, and it's harder to avoid wrecks, and he has not avoided wrecks. He avoided 1 wreck, which they highlighted because it was his first race. And Mike Joy has an affinity for people born in New England, and so we've seen that replay, and they talked about, and they've implanted this memory that Preece is this good plate driver. It's true. I'm not making this up. If you go back and you watch that race, you remember that race, Mike Joy showing him his evasive maneuver, and he avoids the wreck, and they hammered us with that, and they taught us that, and we all believe that Ryan Preece avoids all these wrecks. and then he wrecks in the next 3 Daytona races. And he doesn't really have a good finish. And I bet if I look this up, he was involved in wrecks here as well. He got a decent finish, but I'm pretty sure he got caught up in wrecks. So this wreck avoidance is 100% Mike Joy narrative street driving tonight. I'm not disagreeing.
Oh yeah, you know,
first races of Ryan, because then remember BJ McLeod wrecks him at Atlanta, and Mike Joy about pees his pants. He is so mad and angry, and he's upset. Oh, it's ruined such a good race for Ryan Freak. Yeah, okay. Does anyone else remember Ryan Freak's wrecking every single week for the entire month of July last season? Where was his wreck avoidance then? In racetracks where there aren't really wrecks. It wasn't Daytona. They were intermediate tracks. He was still managing to wreck every single week. Now, that being said, he's probably going to end up in the off-the lineup because I went on such a tangent. All right. I would put Elliott up a little bit. No, he hasn't been as good at Daytona. I don't care. But wait a second. You just said Daytona's more aggressive than Talladega. Yeah, I did. If you want to lower him down to 3, that's fine. I will take this narrative street and go 4. Where do you stand? Fine with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Like Larson, too. He's fine. He can avoid wrecks, and we're now getting to a point where you're going to get some place differential. If you get them laps led, awesome, but they can be optimal. If one guy from the top 20 works, then it's going to be 2 scenarios. Either they lead laps or they got enough place differential. These guys really don't have an option for place differential. These guys have 2 scenarios. They can lead or get place differential. There's just more possible outcomes that get Larson in the off the line. Same thing for Blaney. Could probably even go higher. I mean, I'm putting him at a 4. Now, if I was going to compare just guys in the top 20, he probably would be a 5 among that crew.
So looking at the differences between the Daytona spring race and the fall race,
I think that's crazy. The summer tends to be even, or fall, I guess it is now. That one usually is really nuts, the nighttime race.
Yeah, it used to be bad, and I mean, it's just going to get even worse now with the playoffs being decided by that. And I mentioned earlier that this package that they're running, I mean, if anything, if you looked at the 2 Daytona races, the 500 tend to be less crazy, but by like very small margins. I think they're very high up there and just wreckfest now.
Yeah. So if we go back to 2017, which was the last year, or 2018 was the last year they had a really low downforce. It was crazy to run these cars, and we had tons of wrecks. 2019, the package was terrible for the most part, and they couldn't race, and so it was pretty conservative. Last year, they seemed to have tweaked it and got it right. It's kind of a perfect blend between these things are wrecking loose in 2018 to way too easy to drive in 2019, too much bubble. So it's in between. The drivers have a lot in their hands, which usually means they wreck more. If they can actually race and be aggressive, then they're going to race. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to cause wrecks. And that would be more what I look as opposed to summer, fall. I would look at the different shifts and packages. And I think this is definitely a good, they've put together some pretty good races. The package is running well, which means they're going to wreck each other. Suarez, I'm going to go 2. I can't completely eliminate him. It's hard to imagine that he's the one guy in the top 20. I would, again, see him being a 3rd guy that squeezes in. Seeing a guy that squeezes in the 4-2 lineup, I mean. I think I'm the same place with LaJoy. Are you?
Yeah, I actually have a lineup with
Super Wreckfest, which is good for LaJoy. He's missed. The only way Suarez is the only guy in the top 20, it's a crazy race. LaJoy, it's a crazy race, which they've survived. I don't think Suarez has, but we have seen LaJoy 5 times. There's that streak where he was optimal every time. So if you want to go even heavier on LaJoy, that is fine by me. I mean, you can even consider like it's almost, again, it's where you draw the line. If you're saying 15th or back is a 6-0 build, that's fine with me.
Let me try, and because that Corey LaJoy optimal, I didn't even really think about that. That might drive his ownership up because he always started in the back in those races and he survived. Let me look at where he started in those races.
He's in probably a little, I don't know though. I know it's Spire, but they seem to have some funding and the cars are getting a little bit better. I still believe that Go Fast was a better car. I don't know if it's that much of a downgrade. We'll find out. It could be a junker that he can't hang on to the lead lap.
Yeah, but if you're looking at,
I don't think that's the case. I believe it's a decent. It might be a slight step down for the most part. I believe it's just a lateral step in terms of career and car for him. Let me do the same thing here with McDowell. Same thing with Reagan. And it seems that McMurray's car was fine in the dual race. That was one of our worries is this a crapper? or is it have Chip Ganassi kind of ties? And we don't know, but we did see him have no problem moving around driving. He was talking about, I think on the truck broadcast, he was talking about the tire fall off and said it's pretty fun to drive those cars. If that's the case, if there really is a lot of tire fall off, then this thing is going to be a wreck fest.
Yeah.
Which
okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't think it changed. I don't know. I mean, he said I can't really break down or change my mind on what's going to happen. But if there is tire fall off on these things and we're running a whole fuel run, then there's going to be some issues.
Well, do you also, and I'll come back to LaJoy in a second because I want to answer this. So you got to remember that we're kind of at the point where Daytona, the surface, I mean, it isn't new anymore. It's starting
to wear out. It feels like iRacing Daytona.
Yeah, there you go. Looking at LaJoy, his last 10 races, his best starting position has been 25th. So he's never started a plate race this high up, at least in the last 10 that I bother to look at. I don't think LaJoy, if we want to argue,
the reason why he is starting this close up is because he raced his way to that spot in the dual race.
Yeah, so I might take him off that lineup I have because I don't like him now. I got to fix that. I'll fix that later.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's very cute. So,
it might be too cute.
Now, mainly, I don't think I would change these guys too much. If we're building a 4-2 or 5-1, I still like Stenhouse. If I'm building 5-1, I might increase Buescher a bit. I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to leave all these guys the same.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, anyone like you intentionally like, all right, well, since I'm building a guy in the top 20, I'm pretty sure all those guys. Now, maybe some of these guys will change 4-2. Now, if I'm building two lineups, if I'm taking two guys from the top 20, I'm going to increase Bowman a little bit. I think I would bump all these guys up. Because in this case, I mean, I don't know if it necessarily implies that there's not going to be a lot of wrecks.
Mm-hmm.
But it does say that we're going to get two guys who lead a lot of laps and finish up front, more than likely. Yeah, if we get two guys that lead a lot of laps and finish up front, it seems to me that storyline is a more conservative, less volatile race.
I would say,
or at least for the guys up front. It may still be wrecks in the middle, wrecks in the back, but maybe up front it's a little bit safer, and that opens the door for Bowman surviving more in more cases. So if this is the optimal lineup, two guys starting from the top 6, then I think it's fair to assume that the race is safe up front and guys are able to finish up front.
Mm-hmm. What was I going to say? I was going to say that if 4-2s and 5-1s tend to work out, I would probably increase my ownership to Denny Hamlin, Truex, and those guys.
Okay.
Because I would think that if it's a more conservative race, they should do very well. And it would lock out a lot of the people that I like in the back. Maybe even Casgrella and Cindric. I think that it might be a case to where Hamlin, Truex, Custer, these guys do so well that you don't need Cindric and Gralla in like a 4-2 or something like that.
Question about a bad idea of taking people starting next to each other. Nope. Doesn't matter. Multiple drivers that all start within one spot of each other. Not like, so I mean, that might be referring to these guys right here, or well, mainly these three guys.
Mm-hmm.
No problem. Within a lap, they're going to be, they're going to line up in different rows, so they're going to separate pretty quickly. I guess, let's see if tops. This is kind of silly, but hey, look, there you go. Eric Jones and Casey Kane all started within a spot of each other. I don't really know what that means, but I just don't understand how that really could mess anything up.
Mm-hmm.
29th and 30th, 27, 29, and 30th. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I guess if there's a lap 1 wreck, yeah, or lap 0 wreck.
Something like that, yeah.
Oh, my God. Truck Series never fails.
What a joke, man.
Of course, James Buescher, of course, too. One of the more popular plays. All right. Kurt Busch, I'm still going to say this. So this could be wrong, right? I think we're being different, though, by going heavier on Busch and Stenhouse. So I will stay with that. I might go down on those guys. Because, I mean, we're betting conservative, but I'm going to stick with my guns here, but I could see going a little bit lower there, which is fine. Benedetta still is fine. These guys, right? If we're saying it's a safer race,
they should do very
well. They should not wreck. There's less scenarios where they wreck. If there's less scenarios where there are wrecks, then they should be in the optimal lineup, right? The reason why we're fading these guys is because we're trying to hope for a bunch of wrecks that takes them out. If we're saying it's a pretty safe race, then these guys work really well with guys that lead up front, unless, of course, they are the guys that lead laps. That could actually may be contradictory there.
Maybe. I mean, I think that's
both ways. I could see an argument both ways for that, but the way that I'm saying it's pretty safe. Some of these, if it's a safe race, then we're going to get laps led from up here. And if they lead laps and they don't wreck, then they're going to end up in the optimal lineup as well. That's my theory. Now, if these guys lead laps, then yeah, it all falls apart. So that's just where I stand. And some people might go the absolute opposite of this. If they're building for these guys to score a bunch of points, they might fade those guys. It's fine. We've talked enough about that.
We're really into the weeds here, saying that if this doesn't happen, this happens.
Guys in the back.
There you go.
That's all we really needed to do. Play guys in the back, maybe take one guy up front. Show's over. All right. Full Custer stays the same for me. Joey Gase stays the same. If he could go lower, I would go lower. I don't know about you. I would have, since you are kind of playing some Gase, if you go 4-2, are you lowering your Gase exposure?
Yeah, I wouldn't need him at all.
I
wouldn't want to add bad plays.
I'm already at pretty much no interest, so it doesn't change anything. I will go down to 0 on where. Same.
Yeah.
That's pretty. Did I not go? I went 5 on these guys, which is dangerous. Yeah. But you got to be different somehow. And I don't mind betting the odds on these two notorious recent wreckers can turn the page.
Let's see. I think that's really about it. I mean, the same strategy, at least for me, is the same on Fanduel and Super Draft today. So, play guys.
We covered it all pretty good in an hour. We've hit every driver. If there's any questions about a specific driver,
when was the last time?
Safe Daytona race. 2016, I believe, was really safe. I don't have it in front of me, but I remember that thing being an absolute single file lap turner.
And then the last real safe.
I imagine Logano led a ton of laps in that race. If we see that Logano led a ton of laps in that 2016 race, which is number 6, then we'll know that it was pretty safe. Well, maybe that wasn't the right race. Let me turn that over. Is that the right one? Where did Logano finish? No, I'm looking at the wrong one. Hold on. What am I doing? Oh, is that the Daytona race? Oh, I'm looking at Talladega. I'm sorry. 2016 Daytona, I'm pretty sure was pretty dull. So again, yeah, it's been a while since we've had a Daytona race. That's the last one I remember. Yeah, see, look, Kozlowski led 28.75. That one was terrible. It was the last time that these races were really, really boring. But I remember that one. They just all went single file and we're good to go. I hope they don't do that. We haven't seen it recently. They've all just went out there and said, well, whatever, let's tear some machines up.
Yeah, I'm looking back. I just want to see how many guys finished on the lead laps. And I'm pretty sure I talked about this before.
You got a super draft question, by the way.
Where? Oh, I missed it. Who you like it on super? I mean, you could argue against me, but like people like Cope, Ware, Gase, how, especially in a place where you get a multiplier from them, they're at 2x. If this race goes the way I think it is and they're going to do well, they'll score even more points there, and nobody's going to play them because nobody ever plays those guys on these smaller sites. Even on FanDuel, nobody plays the guys in the back. But looking at the last races, I mean, it's hard to find a race. Let's see, what was this race? 2018 Daytona 500, we had 18 guys on the lead lap. That's the most I've seen at the end so far.
I think it's a good general rule of thumb to assume half the cars are, if not wrecked out, at least a lap down. half the cars. And we've seen recently, though, 3/4 has been pretty close to a scenario. So I think they're going to wreck out. I believe there's going to be plenty of damage and carnage. That's just what the numbers say. That's what the recent trends say. And if there's weather, and we've seen this, there's that sense of urgency. Like the Daytona summer race that Haley won. That thing was pretty safe. They're like, oh, let's just try to get this race in. But then as soon as it was, all right, we got to get this thing in, then you got Austin Dillon wrecks the entire field from the lead. I don't know if you guys remember. It was the Daytona. It was that crazy lineup where Justin Haley ends up optimal. The weather, led people to just go nuts. And wrecks the entire field.
And just remember, if Kurt doesn't pit, I guarantee.
But he doesn't race. He didn't think that they would. Whatever, He got his win the next week, thank goodness. Otherwise, we would never forget that. Since he gets that win the next week and that shootout, it's like, all right, it's okay.
Let's see. Yeah, the last 2016 Daytona 500, we had 31 guys on the lead lap, and the 2015 Coke 400, we had 28 guys on the lead lap. I mean, that's almost 5 years ago, so I'm not expecting this to be a clean race at all.
Yeah. Look, you want to be different, you can go that route, but if I'm going to go different, it's going to be fading some of these popular guys starting in the back. Range shortener, I'm not going down that route. You can, but so it's like, how do you want to swerve? Do you want to swerve by betting on a range shortened race that changes it, or fading some of these popular guys? There's a lot of ways to go different. I'm going to go different this way.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe I'm even looking too much into this, but since we are racing here next weekend at the road course, there's a chance that NASCAR doesn't feel like they need to get it ran in this week. I mean, heck, we could be.
They don't have to get the haulers out, so they can wait. And it would be really that. You're right. There's no way they call this race short.
Yeah, there's no way. If they got to run this Thursday,
500, they waited last year. They got the thing in. They'll get the thing in. They're not going short on this. And that was a bad look when it happened in the summer.
Yeah,
they didn't want to do it. I can't believe. But then again, they had like a Saturday night race in Kentucky, and I think there was other factors. Had they already delayed it a day at that point?
I think they did, and it just happened to be like they called the race and it stopped raining after.
It was the lightning.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? All right, I think that's good. I think we've covered it all. They've got your stuff at the Patreon. Then go racefortheprize.com. There's other YouTube shows. There's plenty of free content from other people. I would advise doing that as opposed to looking at the traditional NASCAR media, because you're just going to get human interest pieces. You're going to get feel-good stories. Like, if that's what you need or want, great, but it might not be what you need or want. So if you want NASCAR content, there's plenty of stuff out there. If you've got other stuff to do, cool. Just play people in the back. We just spent an hour telling you to play people in the back. So anything you want to add?
No, I got nothing else. Just if you like playing guys from the back as much as I do, it's just an ownership game, and we gotta hope for wrecks. It's so different. It's so different when you go into a race and you want to see race.
And you are all in on Derek Cope.
I like the Cope train. I know it's crazy, but we'll see how it goes. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you guys next time.